Strategy with God still requires leadership. In the last session, we looked at how planning a strategy with God required faith. Remember Gideon and Joshua. If it were just that simple, I guess many of us would be more intentional involving God in our strategic thinking. But working with God, for God, is not just about getting God's approval of the strategy and then executing it, is it? Even if God directs your path to find what you believe is a strategy blessed by Him, the simple fact remains. Implementation of these plans is loaded with unknowns and obstacles that will test your leadership mettle. To dig deeper, let's look at the story of Israel's first king in the Bible, King Saul. In 1 Samuel 15, the prophet Samuel gives Saul an assignment to execute God's strategy for the neighboring Amalekites. Saul doesn't have to define the strategy. As a leader, he only needs to implement it. If you had a working relationship with a prophet like Samuel as strategic advisor, and he showed up at your business with a message from God on how to deal with a competitor, things would seem pretty clear, right? Well, in this case, however, a lack of leadership ends King Saul's career as leader. The whole story is in 1 Samuel 15, and you should read it. But here's Samuel checking in with Saul at the end of the assignment in verses 13 and 14, where it says, "When Samuel reached him, Saul said, 'The Lord bless you. I've carried out the Lord's instructions.'" So far, so good. But Samuel said, "What's this bleating of sheep in my ears? What's this lowing of cattle I hear?" Uh-oh. Saul thought he and his team had done a good enough job to complete the strategic assignment, but Samuel didn't agree. The ensuing conversation between Saul and Samuel in 1 Samuel 15 has been a subject of many a church sermon and is worth reading, especially with a business leadership perspective. What we usually don't hear much about is the reason that King Saul gives for his failure. Check this out from 1 Samuel 15, verse 24. King Saul, leader of the men, says, "I was afraid of the men, and so I gave in to them." Did you get that? Here's King Saul, the sole executive, the CEO with absolute authority over his team, and he's telling Samuel that he changed the God-given strategy that was given to him for him to execute with his men. Saul started well in faith, but weak leadership led to wrong decisions, disobedience, and the end of his God-appointed career. Failing to follow through or shying away from doing what you know to be right because of what others on your team might say is still as popular today as it was back in the days of King Saul. Strong and godly leadership is still required, even from you.